Welcome back to the TitleTown Rundown podcast here on YouTube. Joey Matroni alongside Kyler Quelch, and we are very delighted to be joined by Marcus Antonelli. If you are familiar with the Boston Bruins content space, you've probably seen Marcus' content. He's now a part of the After Further Review podcast, and you've seen plenty of his personal content as well. What we've got planned today is Boston Bruins Offseason Outlook podcast. But we wanted to start looking at the Stanley Cup and how that finished out with Carolina getting their second Stanley Cup 20 years after they get their first. Marcus, Tyler and I were talking about in our previous episodes how competitive the Cup was all the way throughout. And it was a really interesting offensive series, especially through the first 5 games. There was between 7 and 9 goals every game. And then with this being a Bruins offseason outlook podcast, you have to look at how it ended with Taylor Hall and Brendan Bussey of the Carolina Hurricanes getting the Cup win. I wanted some of your thoughts on the Cup series in general and the connection to Hall and Bussey as well.
Don't forget about Mike Riley in there, Joey. Come on now. No, I'm just playing. No,
That's
but
true.
yeah, the Cup final was I've been saying it in various different platforms. Like, it's the best Cup final I've probably ever watched. Like, the first couple of games were just so back and forth. The comebacks, the offensive dynamite that both teams displayed, right? I think that it was just, a Cup final for the ages. And I think what both teams were able to demonstrate in terms of just like how the Bruins should look at things is their secondary options on offense. I mean, you mentioned like that goal statistic, and all I can think about is, how can the Bruins develop and find those sort of secondary and like tertiary options to score, right? You got David Pastrnak, but what do you have outside of that? I mean, Taylor Hall, yes, he's on the Carolina Hurricanes, but he's not their first option. Yes, that Stankoven, Blake, and Hall line was great, but those guys aren't the Sebastian Ahos and the Svechnikovs and the Nikolai Ehlers. Those are the stars. And so when I think about what a team requires to be able to, reach that plateau of a Stanley Cup final, you got to have those scoring options. So just seeing how Carolina was able to, and even Jordan Stahl, I have to mention Jordan Stahl, seeing how the team was able to evenly distribute like the scoring, it was, delightful to see. But it's also something where I look at it and I'm like, I hope the Bruins can find a way to add and get more of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll get into more of the roster construction too, but I think you hit it on the head. Outside of David Pastrnak, who had his 4th consecutive 100-point season, and you had back-to-back great seasons for Morgan Geekie, but then, like you said, the secondary scoring or tertiary scoring at that point, you weren't really sure where that was going to come from. I think Victor Arvidsson was a pleasant surprise in terms of that, but he's a restricted free agent, so that's something that they have to take a look at as well in the offseason.
No, for sure. It is going to be interesting to see how they approach it, considering most of the roster is already like locked up, and there's only just like one area in need of addressing on like the forward group, and that's that second line right wing position taken by Arvidsson. But no reporter said anything about Victor Arvidsson in terms of like his discussions with the Bees. So I don't know if the Bruins are doing a good job of hiding, what's going on, the discussions, but we're in the dark a bit with what's going on there. So I'm really curious to see how that moves forward.
I don't like that at all. I don't trust Don Sweeney a bit when it comes to, sure, he's good at getting them to the playoffs, but getting them to that next level and those different layers, like you said, Marcus, of scoring and depth, even defensively. Like during the playoffs, like how many times did I say I'm okay with 3 of their defensemen, and the other 3 I could leave. It's so Like I love McAvoy. I'm okay with Lindholm, with Hampus Lindholm, and I like the Zadorov, the Russian. I like the grit a little bit, but but the other guys out there like Laura and Peak, I think they've already reached their peaks, if you will. So it's kind of one of those things too, where you look at a team like Carolina, they also have a pretty good defensive group as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. In terms of just like how we look at last year's Bruins team, there was a lot of finding, you know what I mean? Like finding themselves, and that goes for individuals to the point of like back to the roster composition. I think the way the Bruins can sort of approach how they can build off this team. I mean, yes, stock's low on a couple of guys for sure, but something that Don Sweeney said at the trade deadline, and a lot of people were kind of looking to soft sell. Like you mentioned like Andrew Peak reaching his peak. A lot of people were looking for Andrew Peak to kind of be moved off. Like, we don't really need this guy. But Don Sweeney rebuts that at the trade deadline by saying, okay, we need depth though. We want to have depth throughout the playoffs. Like, he emphasized that, like, you need guys to just like sub in and out. But and I see to his point of that, but at the same time, it's too much of depth. It's kind of like too much of sort of the same player that can give you that base level of what you need to do. So, yeah, when you compare the Bruins to, a team like a Stanley Cup final contender, they got a little too much of just like the depth. So for me, I just wonder how they can approach and add on. This offseason, I feel like they need to get a bit uncomfortable, but it's hard, considering the quick turnaround and the prospect pool that you have just being so abundant with talent for a prospect pool that the Bruins haven't had in a long time. And the question's like, do you sell that? Do you give that away to another team and you know add on for your team now? These are big questions that the team definitely has to consider for sure.
Looking at that prospect pool, do you look at someone and say they're the most likely that the Bruins would look to not move on from, but try to turn that into a more NHL ready player?
Someone they could turn into an NHL ready player.
Oh, either that or someone they'd be willing to trade to
Yeah.
for a more NHL ready player.
Yeah, so two guys I think of. Kyler mentioned one of them in Mason Lohrei. That's definitely a player where I feel like if the team doesn't think he fits with the way Marco Sturm likes to play defensively, that's a guy that the Bruins could definitely move off him. I think he's so talented offensively. Like, I think his ability to transition, his poise on the blue line, like offensively, his ability to just find those scoring areas, he's great. But that's something that a team is definitely going to value as well, and something where a team could take a chance on and say, okay, let's try and round out your defensive game, because there's still areas for growth with Laurie. Another guy for sure that in the prospect pool that I think can build up to be NHL ready, but another team would look at him and say, yeah, this is a guy we could take a chance on, is Matthew Poitras. Now, we saw stints of Poitras where like he was getting NHL games, but it hasn't really come through in like a full 82 game season yet. We've only seen like, I want to say like 30 something games, both between like 2023, 24, and then like last season a bit too. Injuries have kind of hindered him, but at the same time, he's compared himself, or he's had a couple of comparisons. I think he's compared himself to Anthony Cirelli, and Brad Marchand once compared him to like Mitch Marner in his ability to find open spaces, which he definitely does. It's just we haven't exactly seen that through a lengthy stretch of NHL play. Would I like to see that? Sure. Are the Bruins going to give it to him? I don't know. So that's
Mm.
another guy where I look at and say, like, if there's a logjam there and you see guys like Letourneau coming up, you see guys like, Hagen's already as a center. You already have Fraser Minton there, as well as like youthful centers that are probably going to find their way in the middle or be in the forward group in some form or capacity. another team might
Mhm.
say, we can take a chance on this guy instead.
Yeah, and I think also you had with some of the line shuffling that happened throughout the season, you had Murad Husnadinov end up as that first line center, and I think that he he brings a certain energy and like speed to the Bruins that I think is really fun to watch, and it can be very useful when you put him with a dynamic forward like David Pastrnak.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love that you said Husadinov. I love that you shout him out, Joey. That's my guy. For yeah, for the Bruins to find a player like Murat Husadinov is like diamond in the rough. Like that's something where you're like mining in Minecraft. You're just like, oh my God, like what a plunder of talent you have here. Because going into the season, that's a guy who was a healthy scratch. That's a guy who was just trying to do whatever he could to just insert himself into the lineup. And you look at the way he was able to just build up from being just a fourth line player. And then he, moves up to the third line. Then you're like, okay, they got some here. If they didn't touch the second line, but it's like that's a player where down the road, in my opinion at least, you want to keep. And you want to have where he can play anywhere in your lineup. He can fit like a glove. He can complement your star players, or, he can be a rat along the boards and fish pucks to, fourth line guys in front of the net. He can do it all, right? And you want players like that where other teams are going to circle them on the scouting report and say, this guy's dangerous. Murat Ustinov scored 4 goals in one game. I get everybody was going off that one game against the Rangers. He scored
Yeah.
4 goals, which
Mhm.
is insane because of
Yeah,
that
like you
speed,
don't.
because of that ability. So I
Mhm.
love that you mentioned him.
I struggled to score one. So like that's yeah, but like I kind of the way I look at it though is that they do need to kind of stop bringing in those basic guys and bring in guys who are more elevated, like you're saying. I think too, like you look at what they have now, and they do have some good pieces, especially younger pieces. But and I do think there is a lot of development for Laura. I didn't say that his ceiling was necessarily filled, but I do think that Bruins development isn't always great. Like they don't always do a great job of developing their young guys. So I would argue sell your young guys for better pieces, that are more ready. Um, because, like, I don't know, I'm also a guy that likes championships. So I, like not everybody, obviously. Like I'd keep Haggins, but like with the Patras, with the Lauras, maybe even look at your prospects and be like, okay, which ones are more likely to really fit what we need or fit the scheme that Marco Sturm is putting out there. I already see Marcus disagreeing a little bit. That's okay, but but I've seen it time and time again where there's other guys who fit to other systems better. Um, After a few years away from the Bruins,
Yeah, no, for sure. Oh, there's no disagreement here. This is a great open discussion. I think that it's a good point that they should address which young guys can, fit with them moving forward. It's just difficult, I think, at least for the Bruins, coming from their standpoint, after a season, it's a blessing that after a season where they were the fifth worst team in the entire NHL, they've been able to build themselves back into a playoff window, right? They've been able to build themselves back into, okay, this is what we're supposed to be, right? They have those franchise cornerstones. But now the kind of question goes into how can you build around those guys? And I feel like it's a real process that you don't want the Bruins to rush because, you're trying to insert younger guys who fit in. You saw that with Minton and Husendinov this year, especially. But you're also looking at your seventh overall pick in James Higgins. Now, everyone has their own opinion of it in how these things are, being handled, but that's a huge integral piece to your future. That's a huge piece that you look at and say, this guy is important towards the composition of our roster in the future. If you can get And some people are looking at the lack of points with Hagens and they're saying, what is this? Like like people are calling it too early. But there's some real patience to be had with the development of certain players. And I think that even for teams who are building up into these cup contention windows, I think it does take time. It also takes being able to address which players are correct for your roster. I do think for sure, Kyler, like they definitely should like make a move or two this offseason that would say, like, okay, you're moving the needle. Find something that says, like, okay, you're moving on up. Like you've taken your pickaxes and you're going up the mountain a bit. I'd love to see that. One or two moves.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they should be overly aggressive either because I don't think they're ready for contention yet. Um, and it is a rebuild, but it is kind of an accelerated one too. It's or at least a competitive one where you're at least competitive, and that's more than what the Red Sox can say. I can tell you that, but that's a different conversation. But James Haggins, I watched him play, and the way he gets into open space is incredible. The one game, the one game where he was at Merrimack, actually, he scored the first goal. He was wide open. Nobody was covering him, and he went bar down. And then we scored all the rest of the goals, and we went. And Chuck Scott, love Chuck Scott, goes Jimmy who for the rest of the weekend, uh, but yeah, he is great at getting into those open spaces. Like the puck was in the corner, and he just was in the right spot. So I think there's something to be said about that and his ability to shoot. So like I would hold on to him too. Like you said, it takes time to get those skills to be acclimated to the NHL. Um, and I also thought Fraser Minton was a great example of a good trade when the Carlo trade happened. I wish that first round pick wasn't next year's and it was this year's, but you still have a first round pick, and Minton's going to be a foreseeable guy in that in that in that forward group. So
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially like seeing Hagens like throughout the way he sort of, kind of dominated NCAA hockey. I think that was a huge that was definitely a huge boost of confidence as he headed in. But for people who are kind of like skeptical of his transition into pro hockey, for those who need to remember, he's playing for five different teams. And yes, you understand like, you're supposed to be able to acclimate to the pro game, but at the same time, going from Boston College, then he, drives down to Providence, and then it's like, oh wait, got to go up to Boston, play a couple games. Oh, I'm in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Oh, now I'm gonna go to the double IHF World. That's a lot of, in my opinion, adjustments for a young 19-year-old kid to to have in one single season. It's been a whirlwind of a year since he's been drafted. So yeah, I'd say definitely definitely be patient. The one thing I do love, yeah, he does get into open space. That's just because the way people describe him is he's so cerebral. Like he's always thinking. He's always thinking where he can be. It feels like he's always trying to figure out how he can impact the game in every single way. And I think that's huge that at his age, he demonstrates that on and off the ice, like how he can impact the game. It's great. Frazier's the same way too. And I love seeing that.
yeah, and how I describe it is they have hockey sense, right? They're always thinking about the game and not necessarily, and that is a huge part of the game. A lot of people, like there are people that are great skaters, and I call them figure skaters when they don't necessarily know how to process the game or kind of like know where to go all the time. Like I said, the puck was in the corner at Merrimack, and he is on the other side just waiting with his stick down. And that, nobody can really defend that other than having a defenseman in front of the net. That would have been helpful. But other than that, like that is a smart play. That's a hockey play. Like that's just a good hockey mind. And to have that so young is impressive.
Mm-hmm. For sure. No, and the points will come with that. It's just you gotta like we say, like you gotta be in the right spots and you gotta finish when it happens. And Lord knows he developed his shot this year. Like he has a cannon of a shot. It's amazing to watch.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
unreal.
So I'm excited for especially to see how he can perform next year.
Yeah, Marcus, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially in terms of the like patience aspect of this whole thing. It's not easy for someone like James Higgins to have the majority of his early NHL games be at a Stanley Cup playoff level. Like, and then also having to move between all of the different levels, playing what 2 to 3 games in Providence before it wasn't is I don't know what the exact number was, but
It's like
it
6,
was
I think.
it wasn't a lot, but the movement and then figuring out where you're gonna be within the lines, and then now the report is that he's not going to be at development camp, but I don't think that really. I don't know how much that will hinder what his start of the season looks like, but I'm interested to see what the beginning of the season looks like, where he's going to be able to be part of the organization for an entire season coming up.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys mentioned my favorite part of the entire year, development camp. I love dev camp. But uh yeah, with him, I think it's kind of development camp isn't something he would exactly need to do, in my opinion. It's not like the hugest thing for him considering all the hockey he has played, right? Like
Yeah,
it's not exactly necessary for him to do. Now, given that, I think what that says from the organization perspective, you look at that and they say, okay, you get your rest, but be ready for dev camp. And it's not like, oh, we're looking out, but it's also like be ready for training camp when September comes around. And he obviously will, but they look at I think that's huge from the organization perspective because they look at what he's done and they say, yeah, here's a guy who can contend to slot into our lineup at some point next season.
yeah.
Absolutely. And he has the skill to do it, like we said. And I actually do want to ask you a question because I do know that I watched some of your content and I know you love development camp. Who are some guys that you think are going to be interesting to watch throughout that?
So I definitely I got a lot of names, but it's only the preliminary list, so we have no idea how it's gonna fizzle out in terms of like what draft picks they take. Cause it's like if they take someone at 23, that obviously would go to the top of my list because I'm like, all right, who's this guy? I wanna see what he's about.
Mm.
But definitely off the top of my head, Lundy, Max Lundgren, Merrimack goaltender, he was named one of two. So I'm definitely interested to see, him there. I hope he points me out, shouts me out. But obviously Dean Letourneau, who had a monster season at Boston College. Will Zellers had a great freshman year too. See how he's kind of rounded out his game. It's always fun to see that too. I haven't kept tabs on Cooper Simpson, who dominated the USHL in scoring and is going to be a freshman at North Dakota along with Zellers next season. So he's definitely an intriguing guy that the Bruins picked last year in the third round at in 2025. So I'd keep an eye on him if you are going. And for personal preference, Vashik Lenar, super skilled guy. They picked him 100th overall last year. This Czechian guy, he's literally like another Mason Laurie, but he's just got such skill. He just has such skill. It's amazing. His strides are awesome. He just has like that offensive mind. He almost played for Czechia at the World Junior Championships, and he's 18. It's crazy. And then last but not least, my personal preference, I covered him this past year at Boston University, Jonathan Morello. He literally, you can plug him anywhere in the lineup and he fits like a glove. He plays power play, penalty kill. He's very responsible in his role. He does whatever he can for the team, and he just has like a really good mindset. I think someone that's extremely underrated. And if Bruins fans don't have their eyes on him, they should start doing it for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Dean Letourneau because I was gonna bring him up if nobody else did. Because I think just the jump from year one to year two at BC was great to see. He got his footing definitely for sure, but just like the style of player that he is, being 6'7" is really intriguing to me. Because because especially watching the Bruins lose a series to Buffalo and having to watch Tage Thompson get the best of the Bruins in the end. I think that's kind of the guy you're hoping that Letourneau can maybe be down the road, but whether or not that turns out to be is to be determined as he gets more and more experience.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing with prospects, especially of his caliber, is first of all, you have to be patient. This is a guy who came in a year early into NCAA hockey because I want to say it was Will Smith signed with the Sharks unexpectedly for Boston College, so he got the call. Letourneau got the call early. For context, and you guys remember he had like 3 assists in 36 games, and everyone's like, "What's this guy doing? Like, what's going on? Like, this guy's supposed to be the guy." And context comes out, he's playing under 15 minutes a game, fourth line minutes, barely slotting in, and he played with a broken hand through half that first season. So coming in, you're kind of wondering, okay, what can he do? What can he do now at full health? And he just went off. He scored his first goal, and then from there was just every weekend you're seeing him score a goal a game or contributing on an assist, and it was just that's exactly what I think Bruins fans need to see from like a futures perspective of like, oh, we got a guy here. We have somebody that can really like, that has really high upside. Like that's a guy you mentioned Tage Thompson. In terms of an impact player, I'm really interested to see how the Bruins progress with Dean Letourneau's development. I think he is slotted to go back for his junior year at Boston College. So, we'll see how that goes from there. But you definitely saw his peak of like, this guy's got it. This guy, like, we knew the talent was there. It's just all about the opportunity to do it. And he definitely took advantage of the opportunity. It was so fun to see all the highlights that he accrued throughout the regular season. So that's definitely if there's anything that was like a top five positive from the season, yeah, we can look at the NHL roster and say that was great. Dean Letourneau should definitely be in consideration of that top five of positives.
I also think Max Lundgren. I like that signing. I really do. He's clutch. Like he's not just a good goaltender. Like in the big moments, he steps up. And you know, I've heard from many people around who've said, "Hey, this is the best goalie I've ever seen under pressure."
Yeah, Lundy, honestly, like I was thinking about it the other day, he might be considerably the greatest goaltender Merrimack has ever rostered. Considering the fact that this guy won the program its first, or he helped the program win its first Hockey East title. For Merrimack College to win a Hockey East title, like, 37 years in the making, that doesn't, it comes once in a blue moon for, a small school that we all are fond of for sure. And yeah, watching him that run, it was just really fun to see how he kind of stole every single writer's heart. Like everyone kind of looked at him and was like, "Wow, this goalie's really got something." But for us, like we knew, like for us,
Mm-hmm.
we already knew, like he kind of was like that. So yeah, it is great to see that the Bruins signed him and have him in the system, and I can't wait to see what he's able to do at the lower levels of the organization. I'm glad there's more connections than just the Merrimack with him too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll translate too. I think he's determined. I think and I also think that Merrimack is going to be in the run again next year. I do. They got a good group coming back. They got 18 guys coming back. Got to sneak in my Merrimack minute. But it's always interesting to me how a lot of these hockey players or prospects do come from the Hockey East, and now Merrimack's starting to get more involved in that conversation.
Oh, for sure. And you got to give credit to Scott Boric because when you think about a coach, especially in this sort of world of college hockey, he's someone that in my perspective in covering him, he's someone that truly like cares about each and every single one of his players. And you know, you see that in the way he coaches. You see that in the way that he has treated this program in his tenure here. And, it's great that it's kind of culminated to this point where not only are you hanging a banner at, at the start of next season, but you're returning most of that team that got you there. So it's really cool to see where the program is at. And Boric deserves all the flowers just as much as the players who, trusted in him to come to Merrimack and say, let's go do this thing.
What's like kind of the difference between like a Merrimack versus a BU for you, Marcus?
The biggest difference, I guess, is just kind of with Merrimack, you have to look at the players and Merrimack plays. It's a team that plays by committee. It's a team that plays, you know, collectively. They play a hard-nosed style that the rest of the league looks at and says like, "Oh, they're not going to be an easy out. Like they're not going to make it easy for us." And that was the perspective when I was covering BU, like coming into Merrimack. That's the one thing that a lot of people said, and it's the identity that Bark has kind of built for Merrimack and his hockey program is that every single time they're gonna come into our building, they're gonna make it difficult. Or would you guys go into Lawler? They're gonna make it difficult, right? So that is what I would say is the big thing that separates Merrimack and what makes Merrimack unique as a hockey program.
Yeah, and I'll also add on to that. I think he finally found a group that is really compatible on and off the ice. Like they just seem so connected to me. And I think team chemistry is a lot of it too. Certainly you need to have skill, you need to know the game of hockey, but you also need to be able to play well together, especially when you weren't considered one of the more top schools for a while. That's starting to change, but and you're getting better and better recruits kind of as we've gone on through the years. But I think you're starting to see that he kind of found the right mix of talent and chemistry.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It's really cool to see how when I came in my freshman year, it was like, they made the championship and it was like, oh, this is something that's been building for 10 years. Then they lose, and then it's like, oh, geez. And then they go through that sort of 2-year lull, and then to kind of see them build back up and just be able to quickly, you know, actually hoist that trophy and just seeing the banner in TD Garden was just, it kind of just came full circle. It's been a great stretch.
And for me as a junior, I came in during that 2-year lull, so it was a little bit brutal, at the beginning, uh, and I had said to Joey, we were on air at WMCK. I had said I think they could beat Providence. It depends on how they play. If they play their game, they'll win the game. If they don't play their game, like we're done for the season. I actually didn't think they would do it, and then I turned the game on. They're up. Then that bad goal happened where if somebody was up by the point covering the defenseman, that whole thing wouldn't have happened. And then all of a sudden, you're at TD Garden and they win Friday and then they win Saturday, even after giving up the first goal.
Yeah,
So
that was honestly, if 2022-23 wasn't the greatest weekend of my life, 2025-26, that March weekend was certainly up there in terms of greatest weekends. Or just the way that all kind of like built up. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like this is
And then
great.
I think that that's where the whole conversation about Max Lundgren culminates is the sequence of games he had in the semifinal and the final of the Hockey East tournament. He rightfully so wins MVP of the tournament, and um, the the championship that was 37 years in the making comes to fruition, and get to the first round of the NCAA tournament for the first time, and here we are again looking to go back in the next year. But I wanted to bring up another goalie question, if I could, on the Bruins side. Obviously, everyone knows about Jeremy Swayman now. He's in another year of the year contract, but I think there's questions about what the backup situation is going to be. Corpusalo has been solid at points for sure, but hearing so much about how good Michael DiPietro has been at the AHL level, I wonder if this could be the year where he's finally going to get his shot and the Bruins are comfortable moving on from Corpusalo.
Yeah, I'm really curious how they're gonna approach that too, because I think the big thorn in the side for the Bruins, we go back to the beginning of the conversation when we mentioned Brandon Bussey. Of course, I'll give Taylor Hall his flowers because I love the guy, but Bussey too, like you got to give the credit. You got to give the credit where it's due. That like that, I would be like that has to be a thorn in the side for the organization where it's like you let the guy go. Not only did he go to your rival at one point, the Florida Panthers, but then, he gets picked up off waivers by Carolina. That's a goaltender that, worked hard in the AHL and proved that he was worthy to get a shot. And I look at the goaltending situation now. You still have another stud in Michael DiPietro, who's not exactly young, but definitely has shown that he deserves a shot at the NHL level. When you look at I'm a big cap hit guy, like the money, salary, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Bruins are giving a lot of money to their goaltending. They are giving a lot. Like Jeremy Swayman is definitely rightfully so deserving of the pay that he's getting. But you see the way other teams kind of allocate their money. You look at how the Eastern Conference stacked up with goaltending. Look at the two teams that made the conference final. And I'm not saying this is everything because every goaltending situation is subjective. But Jakub Dobish is making like under $1 million, right? You're looking at Samuel Montembeault is making like 3, and he was sitting on the bench. And in the NHL, you need to utilize your cap space because it's a hard cap hit. If you go over it, there are penalties. You can't go over it. So it's important that you allocate your money in the best possible way you can. And when you look at how much money is being distributed with Corpusalo and you see the other options you have in the system, you wonder, is it the best use of $3 million to give that to a goaltender like DiPietro or not DiPietro, like Corpusalo, or can we use that 3 million elsewhere? What if? There's a lot of questions that go into it. But I do think it's a conversation that the Bruins definitely need to have, especially with there's a bunch of teams that don't exactly have a number one goaltender, that they lack that number one guy. And as you said, Joey, Corpusalo has been solid. There are times where he will make a series of saves that will keep the Bruins in a game. But while there are some highs, there have also been some lows. And you don't want the lows for a team if you're the Bruins, where if you're trying to build up towards the Stanley Cup, you really hope those lows don't pop up. So I'm really curious to see if they give DiPietro another shot. I don't know what they're going to do with Corpusalo, but um, you know, I have to say I would like to see DiPietro wearing number 80 in a spoked B.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that he he brings kind of a different, uh, not to use energy again, but he's definitely going to be some like adrenaline, I guess would be the only way to say it, that would come with him um
And
coming up. And then
real
yeah, go
quick,
ahead.
sorry. DiPietro's a guy this just popped in my head. He won, like, I want to say, if I'm correct, goaltender of the year. I think he won like the league MVP. Actually, I don't know. But this is a guy who's winning at the lower level for you in every aspect. So if that
Mhm.
doesn't say that he isn't, or if that doesn't say like I'm ready, I don't know what will. But go
Exactly.
ahead.
I think that everything he's done at the AHL level tells you that he's worthy of a shot, and I think that if it does open up the $3 million from Corpusal, then it's worth a shot, and that kind of catapults me onto the next part of my question is if they do make that move and you open up money, just from a monetary standpoint, do you, what kind of move could the Bruins be looking to make in the offseason? I know there's been a ton of talk about Jason Robertson and Robert Thomas. I don't know if they're going to make that big of a star-studded move. But like you said, I would like you said earlier, I want to see moves from the Bruins that say they're moving the needle.
Yeah, but that kind of move that frees up some money gives you the ability to make a trade like that. That ultimately, especially in a dry free agent class like this one, yeah, there's some like star or there's some like top end guys for sure. But if you're the Bruins, like freeing up money, especially in the current state of the market, gives you flexibility to say, oh yeah, we have the money to take this guy in. We have the money to pay this player. We have the money to take on his contract. So making those kinds of moves, those cap dump moves, I don't know how they would do it because you know, you try to look for what reporters say and what reporters hear from front offices in the league. I mean, for us, like we haven't heard anything regarding the Bruins on that. The most we've heard is about a seventh round pick who might be going to San Jose. Like that's it. So you wonder how that's going to work, but cap dumping moves like that in a market like this gives you wiggle room to say to open up possibilities. Yeah, that gives us more room where we can take on a Robert Thomas $8.125 million cap hit, and we could do something else. This also gives you the money to say, we could sign Rasmus Anderson at $9 million a year. Do I want to do that? I don't know, but that opens up those kinds of possibilities that if they do want to get into a cup contending window, you do have to pay guys. You do have to give guys substantial money. And even then, there are players that you need to address that are opening up for extension. Fraser Minton's got a year. Husindinov's got a year. Zaka's due. Middlestad's due. All question marks on, you know, how you address your team moving forward. So that's what those kinds of moves give you.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
type of
looking at
players are sorry?
no, go ahead, Kyler.
What type of players are you like looking at targeting?
For me, the biggest the biggest thing for me is I would like to see the Bruins address from the back end. I think if you add one more player to the back end to kind of supplement that right side for Charlie McAvoy, because I mean McAvoy's a workhorse, he's brilliant, but you need somebody who can take some weight off of him. Now they acquired Nikita Zadorov a few years back to do that, and he definitely has. He definitely has been someone that I think provides many different merits. At the same time, you need somebody who positionally holds their stick the other way that, can play to a role and round out the top four. You haven't had a guy who can do that since you traded away Brandon Carlo. Yes, the trade is definitely a win in that aspect, but you've lacked a right defenseman ever since. So for me, I'd really like to see the Bruins attack a right defenseman in a trade, get some prospects that they don't see in their future, and send them the other way and say, okay, yeah, here's the guy that we can take on. The guy I really want to see, if you guys really want to know, is Philip Hronik, but he doesn't want to leave Vancouver. But in my opinion, I think he's a perfect fit for a team like the Bruins. He's already signed. He makes a decent chunk of a cap hit that the Bruins can handle. And he's also a checkmate with Pasta. I was really impressed with how he played as a number one defenseman for Czechia, or as a top pair defenseman of Czechia. And that's something where if the Bruins could explore that, I'd really like to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that even looking at I had it written down in my notes. Looking at the series against Buffalo, defense was kind of the major issue. You look at the 6-1 loss in Game 4. They left Jeremy Swayman out on some islands in that game where he really had no opportunity to make a lot of the saves, and that's where the game got blown so out of proportion. And then to look at some of those four players that you mentioned that are up for contracts in the next year. I think everything that we've just talked about, Mitten and did you say Husnudinov there too? I don't. But like we
Husadinov is due, yes.
okay, so like we've already talked about, I think those two, if you can keep them, they should be a part of the core of the future. Um, and Pavel Zacha is a nice veteran presence to have, but is he one that they do stick with? We'll see that down the road. But I think that in only your excuse me, only your second year coming up under Marco Sturm, the fact that he has this opportunity to have such a young core is intriguing to me as a Bruins fan.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a great. I think the fact that you've gotten a guy like Sturm, who's kind of come in as his first year NHL head coach, and he's shown like he's always discussed the word like being prepared, and I think that he definitely demonstrated that throughout the season. And I really like his approach to how he has coached. It's a good situation for everyone really, considering the way he's put his trust in Fraser Minton, the way he's put his trust in younger guys. I think that's something that the Bruins have lacked for the past couple of years with a bench boss. So it really comforted me that he did see, like, and even then, like we discussed Patra, he wanted to. Like Sturm looked at Patra and he said, like, he loved talking about him and the intrigue of putting him in the lineup. Like Sturm wanted him up here. He's vocalized that too. So yeah, like I love seeing that he wants to play the younger players if he trusts them, and that helps a younger player too. When you hear your coach say, "I believe in this guy. Go out there and like show me what you got."
Yeah, I don't
Yeah, I
think
mean,
they've had that for a long time. So I think that's a good thing, and it kind of builds confidence, like you're saying too. Go ahead, Joey.
yeah, no, that's exactly what I was gonna say, Kyler. You took it right out of my mouth. It instills it instills a level of confidence that I think can lessen the pressure off of um ex young player.
For sure. I was
Sure.
gonna say you two are already a great duo if you're interrupting each other.
Yeah, we're already thinking the same thing at the same time. That's the
Yeah.
the
Great minds think
problem.
Um.
alike. So
I think too. Um. You put this out on social media the other day. The possibility of a trade for Vinny Trocheck, is that one of the ways you see the Bruins looking to improve offensively? If you're looking past, we've established that there definitely need to be improvements um, defensively, but I think this goes back to one of the first points that we talked about. Um, Looking at who else is going to do the scoring outside of Geeky and Pasternak.
yeah, so they got a lot of future capital, like, and that was included in that mock trade posted by the Athletic. But the question is Vincent Trocheck the player that you address and say, yeah, this guy can fit and this guy can, produce, right? Is this the guy that will kind of get us forward over the hump? I think considering the dryness of the market, two players in the span of 3 days were kind of taken off the Bruins' radar in terms of Robert Thomas with the report of from Andy Strickland. Now, my co-host will always say, nope, no matter what, somebody's on the market. But for me, if there's a report that says the Blues are trying to keep the guy, they're trying to keep the guy. It was reported Thomas is off the market. And then Larkin puts out his 3-team list that says, yeah, I want to go to a Stanley Cup contender. He didn't put the Bruins on there. So those options that the Bruins have been considering, the options that they were, you know, would be ideal to kind of say, we got Pasternak as number one guy. Those options aren't there. So how do you kind of utilize the plunder you have and say, does the value add up? Is Vincent Trocheck a guy that I think adds up to the value of two firsts and one of your one of your better prospects? I probably wouldn't say so, but if the Bruins are looking to address kind of having a center core by committee or forward core by committee, Trocheck could definitely be that guy, and he could definitely be somebody that probably thrives in a different system, but I'm unsure if that's the package I would give for Vincent Trocheck. Now, I value the Bruins prospects pretty highly. The rest of the league might not. So that's my only thing on it.
Yeah, and I mean, he's 32 also, Trocheck. So how much left of him are you for sure going to get is another thing that the Bruins will uh, take a look at. But I think that you're right, not having the options of Thomas and Larkin anymore. They have to look elsewhere, and I think that they should be looking to improve that offense in some way, shape, or form. But with the weaker free agent pool, something like a trade seems much more viable.
For sure. No, yeah, and it's just hard when you all right, I think we were here last year with the seventh overall pick, and like McDavid was still like the highlight of the free agent market. And then just like little by little, everyone just extended and the options just have dwindled down. Like your best option in free agency would be Alex Tuck, but that's a guy that you look at on the market, he could command double digits for his average annual value. So, there's a lot to kind of consider there. Do you want to give 10 plus $1 million to, a guy like Tuck who's going to as a right wing play under David Pastrnak? Like that's a thing to consider, you know? So it's tough with the dry free agent market. I'm not gonna lie.
It's also tough too when you don't have that market either because everybody's gonna want Alex Tuck now that there isn't another guy like him, right? So him and Arvidsson too will not like a ton of money, but he'll probably command more than he would usually be worth. So because he'll be one of the better forwards. So it's hard because everybody's going to want that, so it's going to drive the price up. There's more demand than there is supply. So,
Yeah.
in business terms, so I think that makes it tougher.
Yeah, and with the cap space, with the NHL cap hit going up overall, it's like a 104 million this year. It's projected to go up like a lot more next year. So guys are gonna want their bread. Guys are gonna want their bread. They're gonna say like, okay, it's gonna go up to this much. You'll have money for me. Pay me, and rightfully so. Like you want to capitalize on that. We're gonna be paying David Pastrnak $11 million on our books. That's how it appears to the rest of the league. That's going to look like nothing compared to what Kirill Kaprizov is making at 17 million. Both are great players, but it's a $6 million difference, which is insane to think about that our number one star who consistently scores 100 points is only making 11 mil. There's a lot of people who can't stand Jeremy Swayman with the way the contract stuff worked out. Igor Shesterkin's making $11 million. Jeremy is only going to make 8 for the next however many years we have him here right now. I don't have it in front of me. But those are the kinds of things you have to think about when I mean, Charlie Coyle just commanded 6 mil a year. Charlie Coyle just, got his bag. Everyone's getting their bag. But you have to also understand like these players are going to command what they want because of the rising cap hit. And how do the Bruins fit into that?
Yeah, and I think that um, they're only really in a position to maybe make one or two moves, like we've said. And I think that taking a wider lens into it, at least, there's a group of Bruins fans that I'm sure didn't really expect them to even make the playoffs, so they're ahead of schedule in that sense, and they're looking to get back to that point and improve upon that. And if this young core and the stars in Geeking and Pasternak play the way that we know that they can play, and Jeremy Swayman um, can once again be an all-star level goalie, like I think that they have a chance to do that again and improve on that as well.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I can't wait. I'm intrigued to see how the rest of the offseason is going to progress. You boys better buckle up because it's gonna get rowdy. It's gonna get rowdy these next couple of weeks. The draft coming in, and then you get free agency. It's just gonna happen so fast. It's insane.
I know
Can't
that
wait.
Marcus. I know
Sorry.
that you like to dive into the prospects. Obviously now, not having the top pick from Toronto, you said earlier the Bruins dropped to 23. Is there do you have players in mind that you'd like Boston to take a stab at if they elect to take a player?
I mean, I've kind of been like, I've been in the realm of, oh, should we trade the pick? Because that top end draft pick would have given you a guy that could get in your system within a year. I'm prioritizing defense here, fellas. If I'm drafting for the Bruins,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I'd say it's a deep draft. Like there's a lot of heft in this draft, but it's top heavy in the sense of the defensive group. So there's a lot of defensemen that are probably going to go within the top 15. Um, and by the time you get to 23, I don't know if there's a player that a team is gonna not select. You know what I mean? Like I really like this French kid from Quebec named I think it's Xavier Villeneuve or Villeneuve. He's going to Boston University. He's committed there, but he's gotten a lot of comparisons to Lane Hudson, and that's exactly the kind of player the Bruins need. They just need an offensive defenseman who's dynamic and can kind of produce and score from the back end. Do I think a player like that can maybe trickle down and fall? I don't know because there's just so many good defensemen in this draft that you would have loved to have at the sixth pick or the seventh overall pick. They don't have that now. So, I mean, they could use it on a forward. They could use it on a forward and just kind of bolster their prospect pool that way. There's no harm in doing that. But I'd really like it if a talented defenseman fell to them. I'd really love it. All about defense, guys. All about defense.
Me too.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
after
that's where it
watching that
starts for sure.
that game where it was 3-0, and they lost to the Sabres, I'm like, I could lay down in my sled next to Swayman and just block pucks. I mean, like this is insanity to me. But I know that they got a long way to go, and it's a rebuild. But defense, 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 defense wins championships, as my dad used to say.
Yeah, for sure. You build from, I mean, honestly, you see what the Islanders kind of did. Like, we all expected Higgins to go first overall by the beginning of last year. And then Schaefer comes in, takes the takes the reins of first overall. I mean, he's one of the league's most exciting players. And he's like 18. And he comes in and he really sort of solidified that back end and dominated. I think he scored 20 goals. Like so there's no reason to not try like doing it that way, but you kind of need the right player that can fit and say, this guy is a Bruin. There are other names that I've heard that might be within that range for the Bruins, like Juho Piparainen. He's more of a solid guy from Finland. Like he just plays a solid game. There's also Tommy Blyle, who played in the QMJHL from the Moncton Wildcats. I'd definitely keep an eye on him. But I don't know, man. The days leading up to the draft, there's just some there. You hope things fluctuate where teams are like, no, we value this guy. Like the best case scenario for the Bruins. I remember when Zeke Boyum, from Denver University in 2024 fell to 12th overall, and I was like, how is this possible? This guy tore up college hockey and he fell to the Minnesota Wild at 12th overall. And he should have at least gone within the top 10. I don't know how teams are passing him. But that's a situation where I hope a team looks at a guy like Xavier Villeneuve and says, "Oh yeah, no, we don't want this guy." And then like they just pass it on then and the same with Higgins. The same with teams just like somehow not taking James Higgins. And it's like, oh crap, we let the Bruins take him. What are we doing? Like that, let's let that happen again. That's what I'm hoping for. So I'm excited to see if that is the case. I still wouldn't be against trading the pick either. I'll end it on that though.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you have so many different directions that the you just discussed three of them, whether you trade the pick, bolster up the defense, or look for a more solid forward, all of those could eventually be a great impact to the Bruins. But I wanted to we'll finish up here soon, but I wanted to ask or not, it's not really a question, but I wanted to get um everyone's thoughts on the news today that the Bruins will retire Patrice Bergeron's number. Because Patrice Bergeron is a childhood legend of my Bruins fandom. So to have Chara get retired and then follow that up by Bergeron the next year, that a certain era of Bruins hockey is being recognized um, again, and it's been great to see, at least from a fan perspective.
Yeah, I feel old right now. Thanks, Joey. We're all
Hey,
unk.
I do too, so it's not even like
We're all unk guys. Golly. Yeah, no, it's super cool, right? Like we grew up idolizing these like Chara, we grew up idolizing Bergeron. Like those are the guys we truly like, kind of just saw grow into the legends that they were. And it wasn't just the biggest thing I could say is like it wasn't just on the ice how great they were and how impactful they were, but off the ice too. They really embodied what it means to be like an example of like a prominent figure as an athlete here in Boston. Like you know, you lead by example. They both were captains. They just carried themselves with such a respect. Like they just carried that respect everywhere they go. I've heard like, stories and I've seen people say like Bergeron and Char would like, if you went up to them, they always say like don't meet your heroes, but if you go up to them, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did. Um, I was up. I didn't do that. I was up in the press box for the Hockey East Championship, and Chara's there with his two kids, like just grabbing popcorn, and I'm like, and every single one of the guys on the hockey blog is like, Marcus, go ask him for. They're like, Marcus, that's you. I'm like, I'm like, he's with his kids. I'm like, he's with his kids. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to bother a man just trying to be a father. Um, but like every single time I've heard somebody say like if they've gone up to Bergeron or Chara, especially Bergeron, it's just like he's such a down to earth guy, so like humble, and that means a lot to us as New Englanders and Bostonians.
Yeah, I'll also say that they embodied it as well, both those guys. But my reaction to Bergeron, uh, it's about time that it happened. Like I hate to be a little bit of a smart guy about it, but you know what? But it deserves. You know what? He deserves it. So it's just like it's kind of like David Ortiz or Tom Brady or Paul Pierce or like though man, I feel old saying that. But those guys were the childhood heroes, Chara as well, and I think Bergeron was a talented player, but he was also a humble guy and a great leader. And and as a hockey guy, like you just respect those guys who just go about their business, but also help others as well and lead by example, like Marcus was saying, and it's well deserved. I woke up and I was like, it was the first thing I read, and I'm like, oh no, we got to talk about this. So yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a dream come true. It also makes me feel like the gray hairs are coming in pretty soon because I'm gonna be 23 in August. So but yeah, but you know what, we're happy for Bergeron on that one.
Yeah, it also speaks too to like you see those guys are still like in roles around the organization. Like I think it speaks a lot to just, sort of the first thing that comes to my mind is the family environment and the fact that those guys are so comfortable enough that they still want to be in and around hockey in some capacity. Especially Chara taking on like an advisor role. I think that's huge for the Bruins going forward, that those guys who, carry such positive weight to them and such like knowledge and all that, the fact that they still want to be in and around the organization and help out the next group of Bruins, that means everything. Like that's
Sturm, Neely,
huge.
Sweeney, as much as I criticize Sweeney, like all of those guys played for the Bruins. So I think it speaks a lot to how they're very inviting to their former players and their players and former players. Like it's kind of like Merrimack, where it's like a community. Like once you're in, you're in, and I do like that part of it. I do think we could, push a little bit more for a cup every once in a while, but uh, it is just kind of cool to see how it is like a family atmosphere and how they treat their players and how people want to come back and help.
Yeah, for sure. I selfishly wish we were getting that same thing with Brad Marchand, but we don't know what that's going to look like after he
My hero.
after he spent some time with Florida. But I hope he does come back and still has some sort of connection to the fans later on.
Yeah, to wrap it up on my thoughts, Brad Marchand was my favorite player. I think, I think Bergeron was one of my favorite like leaders, and he was definitely my second favorite player. But I think the reason why Marchand was my favorite was because I played a lot like Marchand. Get under people's skin, play physical. You want me on your team, not playing against me, like that kind of thing. And I'm not sure he was really the captain that Bergeron was, but I think he does have a good heart, and I think he deserves to be up there with him as well, with Chara and with Bergeron. All three of those guys deserve it. So
No, for sure. Absolutely. You said it all there, Kyler.
Yeah. All right. Well, fellas, I think this was a great conversation, and I think the off season is really only getting going.
uh-oh.
I lost my microphone there for a second. As I was saying, as my headphone died, as I was saying, this was a great conversation. The off season's really only getting rolling now, so we'll have plenty more to talk about as the off season goes on. We see what directions the Bruins decide to go. Thank you again, Marcus, for joining us on this episode of the TitleTown Rundown. You can follow us on X at Titletown Pod, and all of our episodes are now up on the Boston Sports Zone YouTube. That is sportszone_BOS. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day, everybody.